let's see if we can get some entertainment before we start the panel. Okay. We're going to see fuel cells, I'm told. Now I've asked my panel to sit. I'm not sure how you're going to view, but for comfort, you will decide whether you need to jump out of your seat and then go back there. Okay, thank you. All right, let me ask my panel to come back. Thank you very much for that screening. Vinay, I'll start off with you. You know, Isondo has been deploying some, you know, fuel cells. You're looking at them for not just cars, but, you know, heavier duty, vehicles. And of course, you are starting to even play around with the idea of a hydrogen fuel station. I mean, I was at the Fuel Retailers Association conference earlier this year or late last year, I can't remember, these things happen so fast. And we were talking about the future of filling stations and how much the forecourt has changed and all of this. And that the future of a filling station is one where it might not just be about petrol, it might be about many other things. And a clear example, of course, if you're from Johannesburg, is the M1, just off New Road in Midrand, in terms of what is there. I mean, there's even a Clicks, there's even a KFC, and all of these kinds of things that you'd never really associate with a fuel station. What does the future of hydrogen filling stations look like, and does it pair up with existing ones, or will there be a need? Because we've seen some are now including, for example, electric, charging points rather than just fuel. What is the future of hydrogen filling stations going to be like as well? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, it's a good question. I think the future is not going to be a single source like internal combustion. I think that's gone. People say internal combustion is on its way out. I don't personally agree with that. I think it's going to remain as part of a future vehicle fleet, but probably much more cleaner, greener, much more hybridized. Battery electric vehicles obviously will be an important part of that. Can it be the dominant like internal combustion was? That's not possible, I don't think so. There's too much of structural and resource constraints for that, which opens up the door for hydrogen, and hydrogen, especially on the, starting off with the heavy duty, but progressively moving its way down. So that will be a important part of the fleet going forward, including hybrids with battery as well. So battery fuel cell hybrids will be critical. So the future fleet is going to be a multi-vehicle fleet, which means your forecourts will change accordingly. The beauty of hydrogen is, you can retain your forecourt infrastructure, you can retain a lot of your vehicle infrastructure because it's very similar to internal combustion in terms of the balance of the car, the blowers, the fans. So I think hydrogen is looking very, very interesting as a future. Within the South African or even the global context, I think hydrogen refilling stations are rolling out all across the world. Nothing yet in Africa, nothing yet in South Africa, and we're trying to fix that and fix that fairly quickly. One of the major problems is cost. A lot of the projects like Hydrogen Valley and a few of the others that are looking at setting up green hydrogen infrastructure from scratch, electrolyzer capability, and going all the way down into Hydrogen Valley are very, very high cost of hydrogen in the early stages. So it won't be economical for operators to switch initially without strong subsidies. So as Isondo, we have an interesting project where we've managed to secure 7 tons of hydrogen every day, actually more. But we've designed the project of around 7 tons, 7,000 kilograms of hydrogen a day, which is massive in any standards, even by global standards. We can run more than 300 trucks, buses, cars, forklifts of that every day. We've designed it around 300 vehicles, which again is from a global perspective one of the biggest projects around. And the beauty of that project is it can come on stream right now, today, at the cost of diesel, which makes the project's financials tremendous. It means operators can come on board and actually have a better cost experience than they even currently do with diesel. It saves, at 300 vehicles, it saves about 30,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year, so it's massive from that perspective as well. And location in Johannesburg, central location means within the 30K radius we can reach all the major installations, the refilling points, the bus depots, the airports. So yeah, within that integrated hydrogen highway network, this could be a very, very important gateway project.
Thank you so much, Vinay. But Pat, let me bring you in here from the perspective of, Busmark, and ask what are the kind of conversations, as you've been trying to deploy different green technologies, especially for the supply of public use buses, what are the kinds of conversations that are happening with local authorities? Because these buses are usually in the terrain of, local municipalities. There probably have to be some bylaws that have to be passed, considerations for safety, some strategies that need to change in the market to make this viable from a bus's point of view. It took London quite a while. I saw a few when I was there in September, or on the roads functioning, but it took quite a while even for a city like London to get their ducks in a row to make sure that they can deploy those buses. So what are the kind of instruments that are needed? What are the type of conversations you are having? Yeah.
Morning, everyone. Pat, as mentioned. I would say that if municipalities did not exist, maybe we would have a different conversation about introducing new tech buses into the system. Simple because the procurement process of getting buses is kind of difficult. It's made difficult by that needs to be an adoption of policy. There's need adoption of policy. There's no policy adopted by the government or by the local municipalities in terms of that. Then the second part is that the bus cost is probably 40 to 50% higher than the normal a bus that they will do, and then it becomes a budget constraint that they need to be able to do. And then still in there, policy would drive that change, incentive would drive that change around policy and all of that. But the municipalities are not the drivers of policy change. It's the national government that is a policy change. That's the first impediment, in terms of policy. And then the second one is the infrastructure existence or the investment, It's easy to invest into a road, because you just put tar because it used to be gravel and all of that. But when it comes to then charging infrastructure, it's kind of high tech. You need to generate the hydrogen to a closest source where you actually then get into the bus, basically. So the municipalities don't understand that kind of a system to say that, they have to do that. So the infrastructure challenge is a key. And the funders still don't understand the infrastructure need that is required there. So that's the second impediment that is there. Then the third one is an operational side, So if you used to buy fuel for 10 rands, and all of a sudden you're going to buy 7 kgs of hydrogen and you're going to use on the vehicle, there's no measurement tool and there's no assessment tools that is there, And then the other part is data that is required in terms of the operations of the bus to say that the efficiency and all of that. In Germany and Poland, they can actually tell to say that how many hydrogen buses that are on the line and which one is coming, and then you can choose as a user to say that you want to ride a hydrogen bus or you want to ride a diesel bus. The price difference is there. So there's mechanisms that have been introduced to play into that space. So those are kind of 3 big elements that are mostly impediment that is happening in the market. I've got a contract with Gautrain to deliver hydrogen fuel bus, but I can't deliver it because they have no infrastructure that is charging infrastructure that is doing that. I've done CNG buses, I've done LNG buses, and the best people that have done an ecosystem in terms of buses, it's a mine in Virginia called Renogen. We did Euro 6 CNG bus. They generate and to use everything in the mine, and they only bought 10 buses. So there's no volume, there's no business for me in terms of that. The hydrogen valley that is being driven by the municipalities and the government, it moved from Richards Bay to Mogalakwena. There's no cities there. So demand for buses, it's in the cities, which is your Joburg, Pretoria, and all of that. And those were currently operated. I'll stop at that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritties, volume, scale. What does it mean? Money in the bank, not the lofty ideas of the green technology, but is it scalable? And that's really the big question. But Mashudu, let me bring you in. I mean, you've just shown us a video, fuel cell technology. You've been at it for years. This is not a new conversation to you. You are part of the VAL Special Economic Development Zone and quite well supported as well by government. But I suppose the question is really one, just take us through how this product you have is going to work and maybe transform the fuel industry in South Africa. That's one. But the second one is, as we think of government's role, I mean, some of us were in that technical session 6 earlier, where we spoke a lot about policies, we spoke a lot about regulation, competition, and all of these things. But what is government's role going to be? And I'm sure, I mean, for someone like Bupet, would be subsidies. Do we consider subsidies only at the end user level, so for transporting the commuters, or do we also consider subsidies at the manufacturing, part of it and so on? But yeah, what do you foresee as being government's future role in making sure that there's scalability, there's viability of not just only your product on fuel cell technology, but the ecosystem of the green hydrogen industry?
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all of you. My journey in this industry began some 20 years ago. We were doing a project in the Northwest Province with Anglo and Northam, all the big mining houses. And when we looked at the profile of the Northwest Province, we wanted to do something about the PGM sector. So we invited a German consultant to do some research for us. And they said to us, oh, don't even think about fuel cells. Perhaps we should look at beneficiating PGMs through jewelry. And then I went to Japan in 2005, and I was blown over. Because what Japan was doing with the PGMs that we have in the country was amazing. And I decided in 2007 that I am going to go into fuel cells. And I did a study of energy transitions over the last 200 years. And what I saw underlying the energy landscape in the hydrocarbon sector, I saw a transition from solid to liquid to gas. And when that happens from coal to oil to natural gas, the hydrogen content of the energy system increases. So it was a very interesting underlying trend for me. Then the other trend was, if you look around, you saw the energy technologies decentralizing. So moving from large central systems to very small systems. I was in South Korea in 2007, and I saw a vertical wind turbine that you could hook on your roof. And then you had the other technologies like your rooftop solar also, emerging. But then every energy resource, so if you go to, oil, they have their own technology. So oil has an internal combustion engine, and hydrogen has its own engine. And the engine for hydrogen is a fuel cell. So I thought, well, this is the area that I must get involved. I spent 11 years going to Japan, trying to do work with the Japanese. We introduced a Japanese fuel cell at the Chamber of Mines in 2014, a Fuji electric fuel cell. So the journey has been long, difficult, because our government is very slow in accepting new technologies. I mean, it's like very, very slow. We started talking fuel cells in DSI started in 2007. They only produced a policy last year. You can just see 2007 to policy, 14 years. So, well, we can talk about that. So let me now come and say, what exactly should government be doing to facilitate this industry? There's quite a number of things, but I'm going to focus on two things. One is we don't prepare our people to play in the scientific areas and engineering. So if you look at the number of graduates coming out of our universities today, over 60% of our graduates are in the management sciences. I'm not degrading management sciences, accounting, and so on, but very, very few hardcore technical engineering skills. So that's the one area that we need to look at as a government. Then we need to change our education system, and then we need to incentivize innovation.
Okay. Innovation, education, and just move a bit faster. Other things. Manuel, let's talk to you. Please share the mic there. You've got a network of hydrogen buses in Portugal.
Not really, but I will explain it.
You are, oh, okay. You are almost there. And perhaps do explain that so because it's clear that you don't just get the buses, get them on the road, and they hit the tarmac, and it's that easy. there are a lot of challenges that come with it. Just take us through some of those challenges, because at least you are in a space where it's quite advanced where you are.
First of all, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be with such distinguished panelists, and it's also a pleasure for me because I was born in South Africa, and now 45 years later I returned to speak about hydrogen, so it's a pleasure. We don't have a network. We are a Portuguese company with 31 years developing activities in the gas downstream sector. What we have is a big know-how in building filling stations for natural gas. So in 2018, we created a department in our company to look at renewables, and mostly in hydrogen. And then in 2020, the Portuguese government launched the roadmap to carbon neutrality for 2050. It's quite ambitious, speaking about mobility. But we developed a strategy in-house, and with the know-how we gained in more than 20 years in building filling stations all over Europe for natural gas only, we decided to have our own project, and we decided to create portable solutions for refilling stations in hydrogen. So without having any clients, okay, the board of the company decided to buy 3 compressors because the delivery time is very big, and we built 2 units to deliver hydrogen at 350 bar. So there was a municipality near Lisbon, in Cascais, that they wanted to test if they were going to have buses run by conventional electrical buses or hydrogen. So they tested the electrical buses, and then they bought 2 buses to a Portuguese manufacturer named Caetano. They are selling quite a lot of buses all over the world. And they needed a station, a portable station. So PRF had 1 station available, and in 2021, the station was launched in Cascais. Since that day, it is supplying hydrogen to 2 buses daily, and nowadays it's supplying also 2 Toyota Mirage. I will explain later how. And since 2021, we already delivered more than 10 tons of hydrogen. For a small country, it's okay. More than 10,000 refills of hydrogen. And we are doing it in a rental basis. We have also a second unit, okay? Mostly the same as the first unit. That's been in Austria, it's been in Spain, it's moving now to the port of Sinj in Lisbon, but in a rental basis so that private companies, municipalities can do proof of concept if they decide to go for hydrogen or another kind of energy. But the good thing is here is that you can rent it and you can test it. Okay, so we do not have a network of bus refilling stations in Portugal. We wish to have it, but we don't. But several municipalities are asking us to rent the station for some time. So now we have 3 units of that station. 1 is still in Cascais, and because it was a success, they decided to launch a tender for a fixed station. It will be the first fixed station in Portugal for hydrogen buses, heavy-duty trucks, and light-duty vehicles. It will be public, and it must be ready in 2023 in June, and gladly PRF won the tender, so it will be a fixed station, the first one in Portugal. Also, in terms of experience, we are building now the first fixed station, not the first in Spain, but the first for us in Spain, a fixed station just for buses, and the first refilling must be done in 15th of December. So regarding hydrogen and filling stations, this is our experience, not a network of filling stations all over Portugal, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's mobile, it might as well be possible to take it everywhere. I'm going to come to the room. We've got quite a lot of people now in attendance than we started off. So let me see if I can get like 3 hands perhaps to kick us off. Just, you know, some thoughts, some questions to the panel. You've sort of heard the different areas of expertise that they are coming from, both domestically and internationally. Okay, I've got 1 at the back, I've got 2. Okay, I'll take the 2 for now.
Lawrence Kluter from the Rebel Group. Our headquarters are in Netherlands, and there we actually run some hydrogen buses as well. But I actually had the pleasure of riding on one of Pat's buses a few years ago when I was at CSIR, so I'm very interested to hear the progress. So Pat, could you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you think government should do? Is it subsidies? Is it outlawing diesel buses? As a bus manufacturer, what do you think practically should local government do, and what should national government do? That's my question.
Hi, my name is Wendy. I'm from Total Energies. So my question is around maybe a transition into hydrogen. So as we move from ice, I think most of the panel actually mentioned a natural gas kind of trial or something that's happened. So can you talk about that transition from ice or an introduction of natural gas into hydrogen, or are we going to go straight into a bigger hydrogen focus? How do you see that transition working in your businesses?
Thank you so much. Do I have another taker? Okay, let's start with you, Pat.
Thanks. I've actually slowed down in terms of development. I would have immigrated to Europe already because the hydrogen fuel bus that we've done and designed in an integrated platform has been ready for quite some time. And unfortunately, I don't have it. I can't afford a ticket to Europe. That's a problem.
Nobody believes you, Pat.
No. So what I've done since I've moved into energy, simple because then I needed to create my own energy to be consumed by the buses that I manufacture. But then that allowed me then to be able to say that energy consumption by a bus is only 10% in an infrastructure, which is very expensive. Then there's a need for stationary application for that bus, for that energy to be utilized. So I'm into that energy space because of that. Now, I no longer want to be called Busmark, sorry. I'm SAGHS, which is my group company, and I've got SAGHS Energy, which then generates green hydrogen that you can be able to then take it to fill into the bus so that then the bus can create an ecosystem that works. So for those who know me, I manufacture everything from steel components to fiberglass components to seats to everything, to technology, to circuit boards, because I needed to make sure that I can be safe, sustainable. I've managed to launch a local OEM based on that, which is called RAW. So the bus that is in Gauteng is no longer Mercedes. It's actually RAW after some time of working onto that. So it's to create a full value chain system that works for me. But one of the biggest challenges is that is the support and adoption by our own governments, our own brothers, our own sisters, So to an extent, I've been adopted by Bosch, by Siemens, which are German entities, to work with me in this journey. Maximato, working with them in terms of various things, But I am not going to immigrate. I'm going to be here in Africa for the next 100 years and producing buses. Probably would get into to other volumes, basically. And another biggest problem is volumes of buses. Bus volumes are lower, so it's not attractive for international OEMs to actually establish manufacturing base in the continent, because we have got the least buses. If I was in China, we could actually be in the greatest opportunity. So what I've done, or I'm currently doing, I'm chasing markets which are bigger, which are mega cities in Africa. I'm chasing Lagos, I'm chasing Nairobi, I'm chasing Dar, I'm chasing DRC. I already have contracts and opportunities in those spaces of actually then be able to supply buses. But I've taken an approach to say that it must be concession approach, where you actually offer a 10K to say that I'll bring you energy, I'll bring you buses and all of that, and I'll charge you R1 per transport. Government come with another R1 to provide a subsidy to this, and then we can be able to run operations. Because explaining this business of transitioning to green technologies and all of that to a government official who has never been interested in any, is kind of difficult. So I'd want to take a concession approach, and that's what one is doing. Okay. Just to answer the lady, but I'm not very technical. As you said, I'm an accountant who changed to being a part-time engineer. I don't have any qualification in engineering and all of that, but I run, all my companies are mostly engineering companies and all of that. But I wish I could be given an honorary doctorate in engineering in that form. But technically, what has happened with the studies showed us, With green hydrogen, you need to produce it and use it where you're producing it. Because you lose it, some particles of it, you lose it as you transport it. But if you produce and use it there for public transport, then all of that, it becomes a best. The fuel cell actually keeps it and makes it a range extender, allowing it to operate more. Buses in cities are run about 150 kilometers per day, so you need to be able to make sure that bus runs, and your investment of infrastructure, you link it to that. Transitioning from diesel to gas to hydrogen. It also depends to say what do you have. So what makes everyone come here in green hydrogen from Germany, from Europe, and all of that is because we've got the best resources in terms of sun, we've got best resources in terms of platinum metals, we've got best resources in terms of water. With the combination of that, you'll be able to produce the green hydrogen in a nice and cheapest form. To an extent, it's very expensive to make hydrogen or in Europe because of the kind of weathers that are there.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'm going to ask others to get a chance to respond to Wendy.
Let me respond to Wendy's question. I am a hydrogen fanatic. So when we were developing our technology, my team did all the studies. They were advised and they were told, we're only going to do hydrogen in 2030. And I said to them, not in my world. I want hydrogen now. So we've done the maths now. We cannot do hydrogen now because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the ability to be able to produce hydrogen at less than $1.50 per kilogram. It's still a little bit expensive. We were having discussions yesterday around, on Monday around this. So unfortunately, or I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, we have to go through the natural gas era before we get to hydrogen. So that's the sort of
Vinay violently disagrees. Let's hear.
I don't say violently. So.
No.
But no, what Mashudu is right. There is a transition pathway, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go through natural gas. You can go through other forms of hydrogen. Green hydrogen, like I said before, is very expensive. And for it to be sustainable over the short term, it needs significant amounts of state funding, incentives, which within the South African context, we don't really have. But that's why, from the international perspective, funding from overseas, from the EU, will help ease that pain. But really, the road towards a hydrogen or carbon-free future can start with hydrogen that is not classified as green. There's a bit of a debate around that as well, because green hydrogen is electrolyzed water, right? So, but if you have industrial hydrogen that is being produced by solar, is that green, or is that because it's also carbon-free? So, and to Pat's point, I mean, he's got the buses. We actually have the hydrogen. 7 tons every day is a massive amount. So we can execute that next year already. And the price we can bring the hydrogen in at, the equivalent cost of diesel, means you can pay for the capex on the refueling. You can pay for the differential between a fuel cell bus and a diesel bus, subsidize that, and still come out with a positive NPV and a defined payback period. So it is possible. We've got to be smart about that. And I think within Gauteng, we can take the lead using this project as a base to, within the next year, run at least 5 buses as a proof of concept, and we can take buses from PAT in that regard. Scale it up to 50 in the following year, then add another 100 progressively every year until you utilize the full 7 tons. So it is doable in the short term, and we should be doing it.
Seems like the big debate in economics. The gateway to communism is through capitalism, and then you get lost in the capitalism. Manuel, do you have any thoughts?
I totally agree. I think that in the future, and speaking only in mobility, we will have a mix of electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, and natural gas vehicles. I'm not very aware of the market here in Africa, okay, but in Europe, what we saw after the war was the decrease of proposals or projects regarding hydrogen, natural gas because of the price. But now it came down a little bit, and the projects that were suspended are now ongoing, even with Total, because we do some projects with you. So we think in the future, natural gas in the next 20, 30 years will have a word to say, because the companies, if you want to buy 10 hydrogen trucks tomorrow, you will probably won't get them, but you can buy 10 natural gas trucks. Okay, so we think in the future there will be a mix with different energy, and that was my thoughts to these questions.
The future looks busy with choices. Are there any other hands? Short question. No, when you must go whisper to Panyaza that people are ready to work there in Gauteng.
Thank you. Mpomudise, I just wanted to find out, so we're speaking about green hydrogen buses. Is there green hydrogen trains? Do they exist somewhere? Is it something that we can explore in South Africa? Yeah, short question.
Are you thinking about the trains from Naledi to Park Station?
Ask Alstom and their 1,000-kilometer line in Germany, but the gentleman will speak to it. Gents, you're all my clients as Gauteng Provincial Government, Jack Hossif, by the way, because you, or at least 3 of you are members of our SEZ community. I suppose what I wanted to provoke, it's somewhere between the buses and the trains, which is the question of trucks. You've all spoken about public transport systems. If I had Jack van der Merwe and the Transit Authority of Gauteng guys here, they would comment that part of the big transition they're preparing for is what happens to freight trucks, because EVs have not penetrated that space. So I just would be useful just to hear a comment on how you see your systems and technologies applying to the freight universe.
Sebastian from EOT Fixing Solutions, Southern Africa. The difficulty with comparing European bus services and South African bus services is because of the density, the population density of the cities are different, vastly different, and it often makes bus services very difficult to implement in South Africa. So how is that accounted for in trying to implement a new bus system or a new fuel system for buses in South Africa? Thank you.
Has that hand at the back gone? Yeah, thank you. Last one.
Lawrence, I work for ArcelorMittal in Van der Bijl Park, and obviously in the industrial environment, this question of what is the transition is pretty much also the question we ask. My question then is, in mobility, if we are thinking of transforming our energy requirement via a middle route like natural gas, shouldn't we then link it to the bigger industry opportunities that is asking the same question? And if that then combines and it makes sense, will that then not determine the choice of transition?
Thank you. Pat, do you understand? I do want to, let's see if we will have time. I mean, I don't want to bombard my panelists. We've taken 4. I think that last question is a very important question. Are we trying to get the green hydrogen economy to be the blue-eyed energy economy?
I'd respond to this. We need to be conscious of the climate requirements first. You know, we need to say that we need to be zero. We're trying to get to zero emission target, you know, in anything that we do, from food to any ecosystem that is there. So that's one element that we need to adopt. So the country needs to have a policy and adoption to say that we would looking to be zero emission, not only on mobility only, but in many other things as well. Because, you know, when you're talking about green steel and all of that, that's where then the value chain existence is driven. So I'll give an example. So to your question, to say that how do we manage to say that, you know, South Africa is got a lower demand of buses versus any other country. You'd see that the taxis are 70% in that public transport system. Trains are 5%, buses are probably about 20%, you know. And I'm sharing you my strategy now so that you can understand. I am in public transport. I'm not in bus manufacturing anymore because of the transition. So I'm into technology for trains. So we're working on a tram with Alstom and a partnership so that we can be able to deliver a hydrogen fuel cell tram that will improve that. I have developed an electric taxi, and we're working on now. We've got a kit for hydrogen fuel cell taxi as well, which is a market which is dominated by 70%. But, you know, how do you convince a taxi guy who's paying 300,000 currently on a taxi to pay R1 million on a taxi? So you need to subsidize taxis so that you can be able to get into that market, right, and then you can be able to transform, because those are biggest carriers of our public in this country and many other countries. Mostly is South Africa and African countries are carried by mostly taxis, and that's where the market needs to go. So you need to convince that. So people who are driven on a zero emission, you know, I'm talking to your Ubers of this world. I've got an electric car, I've got a hydrogen fuel cell platform of a car, but if I can roll out 1,000 taxis in that cab, you know, so then I've got an ecosystem that works into that. So this is why I says that my business model had to change to accommodate what is currently happening so that we can be able to achieve zero emissions, you know. So I am talking to various players so that we can be able to find a public transport that is functional, supported, and that is zero emission, and the market is investing into it. So okay. I talk to taxi guys every day, I talk to government every day, I talk to the banks every day to try and convince them on this change in the public transport sector story, basically. Okay. And I'm fortunate, I am convinced, I've managed to convince the Gauteng government to be able to accommodate this kind of drive, and we are at an advanced stage, you know. So, you know, probably I'll hand over to my son sooner than expected, you know, because that's my future.
And he's here in the flesh.
So I want to say welcome to the era of the prosumer. Welcome to the era of mitochondria energy, where everything, your car, your train, your house, will become an energy generator. You'll drive your car and you park it at home at night and you are able to connect. So your electricity, through the technologies that are emerging, fuel cells, and also for Gauteng, you know, the electric vehicles is going to be ubiquitous. So there are trains that are running around the world now. We did a study for Transnet in 2014 to try and introduce fuel cells into their trains, into their harbors at Transnet, but there was no uptake at that time. But anywhere there is a need for energy, we will be able to provide them. So the other comment that you raised from ArcelorMittal, you know, the tragedy of South Africa is that we work in groupthink and we work in silos. If it's government, it's all silos. If it's industry, it's big business and no small business. So in the Vaal Triangle, thanks to the Gauteng government, where we are going to be setting up our factory, we have started a conversation with all the different stakeholders. I was talking to the manufacturing circle last week to say, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be probably as big as, you know, ArcelorMittal, you know, in time. And so let's find one another. Let's sit around the table. This is one economy. We don't have an economy for that and we have one economy, and we need to sit around the table together and create an integrated strategy to develop the economy of South Africa. So I think let's sit and talk, all of us, about how we create the future for all of us.
Yeah, not talk about talks.
So just going to Jacques' question, that's actually becoming, Jacques, a bigger market than buses. And so in our case, for example, the company that has the hydrogen will be converting the entire fleet of 50 plus trucks onto hydrogen. And we're scrambling now to find those trucks, because trucks has lagged behind buses in terms of development. So on that, we're working with the DTI and I quite extensively to say, look, the technology exists, but given the scale of this, if you're going for 300 to 500 vehicles, you can start to now look at the platform for local assembly. Not necessarily manufacturing, but assembly of these vehicles off a singular platform. And then from that perspective, that feeds quite nicely into our main project, which is the manufacturing of MEAs and catalysts for fuel cells and electrolyzers. And if you start local assembly, then we can go one step down towards local industrialization, where these products can go into the local assembly and then from there into the market. But yeah, trucks will probably end up being the biggest portion of this particular rollout. Yeah.
Manuel, any thoughts?
No, it was more directed to South African market.
Okay, so let me give you, Budi, a chance to ask your final question, and then.
Thank you. I'm John Mukwena from Royal Asconi, and my question is to the whole panel, especially Mr. Ramano. What are the impediments to breaking the $1.5 per kg for hydrogen?
I did not hear.
What are the impediments to breaking the $1.5 per kg in terms of production?
Sorry, this is a question that was...
it's a point that was raised.
Yes, not for us, because in Portugal we cannot produce green hydrogen for 1.5 euros per kilo, and euro is almost like the dollar. So what we are pointing is to 2.5 euros per kilo. So I don't know where you have 1.5.
And maybe Manuel, just take us through in terms of your own space. What are the cost drivers? What are the things that are making it difficult to drive that cost of manufacturing down?
First of all, of course, the lack of subsidies. Okay. But as a private company, and we are being in lots of seminars and conferences like this, we are also always listening to the question, where are the funds, where are the subsidies, the chicken and egg dilemma, and really we don't believe in that. Because there's another project, not regarding mobility in Portugal, which we are involved, that there was a private company that's dealing with electric components, and they wanted to test hydrogen in a fuel cell. So the owner bought an electrolyzer like 3 or 4 years ago. He was not waiting for the European funds, he bought it. He covered the roof of the factory with solar panels, and he started producing green hydrogen. So he approached PRF, because we have some know-how in the gas downstream sector, and he had a project, and he shared it with us. And we started now, after 3 years, the injection of of hydrogen in the natural gas grid in Portugal. It's a very small pilot project, but the project went through without subsidies, without waiting for funds. There was 2 private companies that decided let's try to decarbonize the natural gas grid. So they joined forces. He had the technology for producing the hydrogen. We had the technology to build everything. We built a mixing unit to mix the hydrogen with the natural gas. And as I said, it's a small pilot project, only 80 clients, but it's working. The aim was to reach 20% of blending of hydrogen in 2 years, and it started with 2%, now it's already in 5%, because nothing is happening to the appliances, no leaks, everything is going okay. So it's running for some months, and just last week, the government decided to subsidize this project, okay? What I say, I also believe that the future will be with hydrogen, but what I see, and sorry for being so realistic, is that the projects can run through without subsidies, without funds. It's difficult to scale. We need to decrease the price of hydrogen. The first project in Portugal was to centralize the production of hydrogen, but because of the transportation costs, the Portuguese government decided to create small hubs so that small valleys could have the production of hydrogen and everything, and the final off-taker at site. So we need to scale up, of course, but not thinking just about large-scale production of hydrogen, because let me tell you, 2 weeks ago I was in the biggest hydrogen plant in Europe, in Puerto Llano in Spain. It was built by Iberdrola, and it's a huge, huge project, much bigger than PRF could do today. But the production of hydrogen, it's to supply a factory, and it's producing a lot of hydrogen, but just 3% of the needs of the factory. So when you speak about scaling up, probably decentralize is the best way to do it, not centralize it in a known place, because the projects will be most too expensive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. So now, as part of closing remarks, I'm going to give everybody a minute each, and I'll start with you, Dada Mashudu, because there's also a question. That question is partly directed to a statement that you made earlier. What is it going to take to inject some speed on government to support all these many beautiful multiple initiatives, but from lawmaking, subsidies, and all of that? What do we need? One ingredient that we need to catalyze government into action.
So to answer your question, the price at which hydrogen would be able to compete with all the other energy sources is $1.50 per kilogram. Now, why we can't reach that price is because to be able to get hydrogen from water, and if it's supposed to be, and there's an argument here from, chemical engineers, whether, you need a source of energy, and that source of energy is wind or solar. And if you are looking at wind, even though the costs of solar are fairly low, but if you are looking at the special requirements, a 240 kilowatt system in some instances requires something like 2 hectares of land of solar to be able to produce 240. So there are costs and benefits in that. So that's the issue. What would require for government in South Africa to move is a crisis. And we have a beautiful crisis in South Africa.
I thought we have many already.
Which is called load shedding. Because, if you don't get to a crisis here in South Africa, I'm sorry, they work with me very well. They've given me land, I must be very careful what I say. But it requires a crisis to get people to think that we must do something. That's not how you plan, and they are proactive.
Okay. Vinay?
Yeah, we already have a crisis for 10 years and they still haven't acted, right? So, but maybe I disagree with Mashudu. We don't just need a crisis. What we do need is embedded projects to lead the way. We can't afford to do things sequentially, put in legislation, do R&D and put stuff in. We got to have shovel-ready projects in the ground now and use that as the base to learn what needs to be done. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Legislation exists overseas, for example. We can import, we can tailor it to South African conditions, but all needs to be done simultaneously, not sequentially. And I think shovel-ready projects will start to lead the way in terms of what's required, and it will be a proof of concept for everybody, operators, the bus, truck people, government, and that's what should be used as the learning curve, basically.
Thank you so much, Pat. From your side, that one thing that's going to catalyze government into action.
I'll start with a joke, and I wish everyone would understand. I want to bring in this concept of total cost of ownership. And those who are married, they will understand that, you know, and especially from closer culture, you have to marry a woman and you have to pay lobola, you know, so it's an investment that you have to do, but you just don't make that investment anyhow, you know. You just make sure that you can go and see the mother of this woman so that you understand the life cycle. This woman is going to live with you and contribute and help you and all of that for a longer period of time. So that concept, you would have to understand it correctly, because you're going to spend the rest of your life with this person. You need to understand this person. Is it going to be friendly to your friends, to your mother, to everyone for the rest of your life? So if you measure that total cost of ownership as a man, not offending women, you know, but and that total concept of investment, and you measure it over a period of time, it would make more sense for the government to make decisions in many things that they do. For instance, if they decide that they want to drive this green hydrogen or drive zero emissions, they need to understand the total cost of ownership in anything. For companies, for banks, they need to stop evaluating businesses based on profitability or loss making. They need to start evaluating total cost of ownership, because you can see the challenges and problems when you do a total cost of ownership model, basically, because you would understand to say what are the inputs to make this thing work and what would make it sustainable for the balance of its years and its existence. And then you can be able to then understand and all of that. I have not seen any man who has invested in an ugly woman or unperforming woman and stay with them. You know, they want to exchange them. That's the only reason. And I'm saying that. So you guys make sure that the total cost of ownership as companies, individuals, and it's right, it's done right, and everything else will happen. Thank you.
You're a brave man, Pat. What is this? You're a brave man, Pat. I mean, as you kept going, Vinay and I kept like, hey, can you hear him? Can you hear him? He's sinking, he's sinking. Manuel, but give us from a Portugal point of view what it has taken, because as I listen to you, we're not. No. You did preface. When I listen to you, it doesn't take the big cities. It doesn't have to always be the big guys who move fast, right? It doesn't have to be Lisbon that moves fast. But what is it then that motivates movement?
Let me say that in Portugal, our government is very focused in reaching or even passing the Paris Agreement's goals in 2016. We were the first country in Europe to, it's a fact, not my opinion, okay, to close all the coal factories, okay? But now we are buying it from our neighbors, so.
It's pity, we would say
Hope
here.
you understood why it's a fact and not my opinion, okay? So, but what I think is...
The relationship with Ukraine is going to pass.
Well, I have a representative here of the government, so sorry for being so sincere. Obviously, in Portugal, our government is very focused, and it's creating all the opportunities for the things to move up. But in my opinion, if we want to reach carbon neutrality in 2050, we cannot, as citizens, sit and wait for the government to make all the decisions. The government, the policies, the private sector, and the civil society must work together, because, as everybody knows, there's no planet B. So let's hope that everyone's joined together to reach the goals. Otherwise, it will be not a fact.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for our panel. I've definitely learned a lot this afternoon, and there's a lot that's going on. I believe that we will meet again downstairs at plenary at 15:15, if I'm not mistaken. Is it still 15:15? Those who have the app, please assist us technologically challenged people, and we will do key takeaways, and then at 4 o'clock, I think, again, back to the white marquee outside at the square. We will have some cocktail and goodbye drinks. Thank you very much.
But I forgot you were fair.